I just shoved a book. Alright y'all, here is the deal. These last few months I really tried to get into the fall spirit. I did things like enjoy the leaves outside and decorate my house and also somehow get talked into going to a haunted house. Don't know how that happened. And of course also read some fall books. I read a total of 8 books, which is quite a bit for me. I've really been getting into reading, and especially like reading fall books when it's fall, like so here is my September, October, and November reading wrap up. I will be going in order from how I read all of them, but trust me, they keep getting better and better as the books go on. So the first book I read was Never Never by Colleen Hoover and Taryn Fisher. I've read quite a few Colleen Hoover books over the last year, but I don't think I've ever even heard of Taryn Fisher, so maybe I'll have to read some more of her books. This one was very different from any of the other Colleen Hoover books I read. I don't remember what I rated this. I gave this a 4.5 stars. It was kind of a really weird storyline, but I kind of liked it. Basically, these two teenagers have been in love since forever, had their first kiss together, yada yada yada. And then all of a sudden they lose pretty much all of their memory of who everyone is around them, but they still remember like some things that they like to do, or just they remember the most random things, but they can't remember who each other are. Who each other are. I will say the only thing that kind of threw me off in this book was that the authors like put things in at the beginning, but they didn't explain it at the end, and I was kind of waiting for that explanation and it never came. So other than that, it was a pretty solid read. The next book, I loved this one. Honestly, I loved the majority of the books I did read in these last few months. I read Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I love this book. I loved this book. I went through it way too fast. The ending, oh, she really made me think. She really, oh my god, this book is so good. Like this, I think this is one of those books that you just have to go into it not knowing anything because it's so good. Oh my god, this was a 5-star read for me. I freaking love this book. Like everything was so perfect about it. I love Archer. Love Archer. What's her name? Bree, I knew that. The story starts off with Bree's point of view and then kind of switches back from her and Archer, who are like the two main characters of the book. I will say, as a fair warning, this did have a little bit of spice. So, if you're not into spice, may not be the book for you. But seriously, I highly recommend. I loved this book. Next up, we had another really solid read. I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston? I'm not entirely sure, and I'm sorry. This one was so good. This was the first book I ever annotated, so I quite enjoyed this book. This one was like, it was such a fun read, and it like, the way that everything ties in so perfectly. I love a good full circle. This book is another solid 5-star read. It was so good. One of my friends said something that she heard about this book, which I thought I would mention in this video because it's so true. This is one of those books that you cannot have all of the happiness and the happy ending without having all of the sad and heartbreaking parts of the book. Like, in order to have the happy, you have to have the bad or sad. But this was such a good fall read. I also flew through this one. This one was such a good book. I highly recommend this one. The title of this book fits perfectly with the plotline. This book is about Clementine and she moves into her late aunt's apartment, and just the story and the magic that she finds with the 7-year slip of the apartment. I loved it. The next book I read was The Hollywood Jinx by Sarah Wilson. One of my friends actually recommended me this book and I rated this a 4-star. It wasn't the worst book I've read, but basically it's where this movie star Nick Haddon comes into a very small town of patients, and there's quite a bit of character development in the book, but without giving it away, they were leading up to like the big thing in the book and they did not do anything with it. They just said, oh, it came and it passed, and I'm like, okay. So not my favorite read, but it was quite a fast read, honestly. It was only like 200 something pages. It was fun. Not my favorite, but I'll add it to my book collection. This next one I'm very conflicted with. It's You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hoggle. I wound up rating this at 3.5 stars because the first half of the book I did not like it. I wasn't into it. But then the second half of the book, I loved it. But like, in order to have what I loved about the second part of the book, you have to have the first part of the book. So it's basically about this couple who secretly fell out of love with each other, and the back of the book made it sound like there was like pranks. It says the two of them go head to head in a battle of pranks, sabotage, and all-out emotional warfare. Which, yes, but I was kind of expecting it to be more fun, not like serious, and that's kind of what this book more or less was. So wasn't my favorite, but the last few books I read after this made up for it. And then this next book is my favorite book that I've ever read. And I wasn't really expecting it to be. I was like, I should probably tell you what the book is first. I read November 9th by Colleen Hoover, which I know a lot of people are Colleen Hoovered out by this point, but I haven't read this one, and I did have a little bit of a connection to this book. It hit home for a few parts of it. If I haven't said already, this is like a 6-star book for me. This is my favorite book I've ever read, and I actually did annotate this one as well, as you can see here. I think this is one of those books where I shouldn't say anything and you should just go into it blindly, because it was so good, and it's probably just so good because, again, I relate to it, so I thought it was such a good read. The ending, like, last little bit, was not expecting that. That was a big plot twist that I did. Well, actually, there's a few of them that I was not expecting to see, but oh my gosh. This will always have a special place in my heart and on my bookshelf. This next one, I'm sure you've all heard of it, but I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I had to. I didn't realize what a hefty book this was. I mean, this is like a 429 pages. I think this is the biggest book I've ever read. It is. This is the thickest book I've ever read, so far at least. But this one had a lot of spice, which I'm a little bit of a fan of. But this is also my first like sports romance. I've never read anything like that before, so that was also very different. I've always loved figure skating, and I do quite like hockey too. I think I gave this one 5 stars as well. Maybe I'm just new to the book world and I love almost every book that I read, but honestly a lot of the books that I've like been reading have been from recommendations, so this one was good. There was some plot twists, some funny moments, but overall I did quite enjoy this book. The ending though, Aaron, that's all I gotta say. Alright, we are on to the last book that I read recently. Again, another 5-star read. I read The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and over the summer I read the Inheritance Games trilogy and fell in love with it. I loved it. So when I heard about The Naturals, I figured I'd check it out. When I tell you I flew through this book, normally it takes me at least a week, if not 2 to 3 weeks to finish a book, because I just don't have the time to, or I'm just not a fast reader in general. But this book, legitimately, I sat down for like 2 days and I finished it. It was so good, and I desperately need the next 3 books in the series, which are Killer Instincts, All In, and Bad Blood. I need all 3 of them now. I don't know if I would call this YA. Everyone's been saying it's YA. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. But this series is basically about the FBI recruiting a group of kids that they call the Naturals, who have like these natural abilities, like for instance to read people, to read their emotions, their face structures, like to tell if they're lying or just different things like that. And it's kind of like a mix of like Criminal Minds and like teenager FBI. It was so good. After I got done reading, I'm like, what now? Because I'm like, I need book 2. Personally, this was also a 5-star read for me. I quite enjoyed this one, and you already know in my next reading wrap-up, I will at least have book 2. So these are all the books that I read over kind of like the fall months of September, October, and November. I'm actually really proud of myself. I got through quite a bunch of books. Quite a bunch? That makes sense. I got through quite a bit of books, and I'm so excited to keep growing. My reading collection, my bookshelf is growing, and it makes me so happy. Feel free to leave me any book recommendations down in the comments. I'm always looking for more books to read, so feel free to recommend me some. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed and want to see more wrap-up videos, or maybe even some reading content. I could always try that. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!